Hey, Michelle. It's great to see you again.
It's good to see you too. I have news that the FDA just approved a brand new once a day weight loss pill called Foundayo. I think that's what it's
Okay.
called. And it doesn't require any injections or fasting. But the biggest question that I'm getting in my own, what's next for me is can I take this pill and finally throw my CPAP machine in the garbage? And today I think let's talk about that because it's been not just with this one, but now there's so many choices. And I need to know what to do about it.
Well, welcome to Sleep Takeout, all of our Sleep Nation followers. I'm Dr. Baughn. I'm a clinical psychologist, along with Dr. Michelle Zetoony, dual board certified in pulmonary and sleep medicine. And today we are unpacking the massive news about Foundayo. But first, we offer our own massive news, Sleep Nation. If you struggle with sleep difficulties and it's driven by a racing mind at 3 a.m., rather than your airway, so if it's not the obstructive sleep apnea part, our brand new Sleep Takeout workbook is officially live for pre order. And we custom built this with scheduled worry pages to get the anxiety out of your mind and your head so that you can get back to sleep. The biggest kind of like analogy that I like to use, Michelle, is you got to think about this anxiety as just energy or water that's going to kind of cut through anything. We can't stop the anxiety, but we can direct it. And so what our sleep takeout workbook lets you do, it lets you choose the areas that you're going to let the water or the energy carve through. Because if you don't actively choose it, it will choose it for you and it will continue to keep you wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so, again, all of our Sleep Nation listeners, watchers, followers, the Sleep Takeout Workbook is officially live on the website, sleeptakeout.com, dosleep.com. We would love for you to pick up a copy of it. You can get it both electronic PDF or you can get it as a printed coloring book, which I'm super excited about. So, all right. So let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think about it. So, Michelle, tell us more about Foundayo. What is this, and how in the world do you pronounce the generic version of this medication?
I mean, great question. But Foundayo or Orforglipron, it was approved on April 1st for treating weight loss in morbidly obese patients. So we're talking about, anything over BMI of 30 being considered obese, but in the morbid obesity categories, we're still talking about, over 35, over 50. The ones that basically approved for getting surgical weight loss. And one of the interesting things is, unlike Wegovy's pill and other GLP injections, this is a small molecule pill that you can take any time of day with no food or water restrictions. Uh, and again, it sounds like, unfortunately, like the release with the other ones, they're not giving people a lot of extra help or navigation for other things that are going on that might be contributing to weight. The FDA status specifically says it's not approved for sleep apnea yet. They are doing another trial. They're in phase 3 trials. It's called the Attain OSA trial to look at sleep apnea for obese patients, kind of like what they did with the Surmount trial and the Zepbound patients. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind right now, but still kind of exciting news that there's other medicines that are on the market.
And Michelle, this one I think is important because a lot of times these GLP-1s get a lot of flashy news coverage for weight loss. But when it comes to obstructive sleep apnea, there's only one. I think it's Tirzepatide that is approved for actual sleep apnea. And can you explain the mechanics of why? Like, what is it that's happening as it relates specifically to sleep apnea and this GLP-1 GIP of Tirzepatide?
So one of the things that Lilly, who sponsored the Surmount OSA trial on Zepbound, claims is that losing 10 to 15% of your body weight clears airway fat deposits, which inherently reduces your apnea hypopnea index. And again, if you've heard any of the previous ones where I take kind of more of a negative stance on GLP medicines, in these, cautiously optimistic in that these medicines exist is that we all know people who take medicines that are still going to have airway deposits, lose weight in their face and their throat versus if they lose it in their legs or their thighs. But a lot of times these GLP medicines are contributing to weight loss in the face and the neck, which is an important physiologic mechanism of sleep apnea in many people. Now, I'm going to point out is that people without obesity of any type can have obstructive sleep apnea. And so we know that it's not just fat deposits. We know it can be genetic and bony structure. We know it could be due to mouth breathing, for example. That's why we talked about working on ways to nasal breathe only. We know that there's hormonal changes that can affect this. So these are not for throwing out your CPAP and now just being on a medication. So this is not an indication to go get a sleep study to prove that you have sleep apnea that's moderate or severe. So you can say, hey, I'm going to go be on a GLP medication. It's important to realize that's not what it does. It's in combination with people that have sleep apnea. They're currently on CPAP treatment. And the medicines, what they're trying to say is that even with treatment in place, or if you're not on treatment and refuse treatment, that your AHI is decreasing. It doesn't normalize sleep apnea treatment like things CPAP, oral appliances, upper airway surgical treatments for treating sleep apnea. This just wasn't where it was it wasn't where it was going, but I think that's where the media has translated it to.
Sure. Well, I think, and this is a huge thing, I think, Michelle, because we were talking about this before we hit the record button, that a few things. Number one, Foundayo is not approved for obstructive sleep apnea. So number one, you can't even, approach your doctor and ask, can I take this new oral GLP-1 med to address the sleep apnea? But then number two, we also talked about this with Tirzepatide and sleep apnea, is just because it's FDA approved for sleep apnea does not mean that your health insurance is going to cover it. At least as of, we're recording this here, in April of 2026. These things can change. But as of now, just because it's FDA approved for that doesn't mean that your insurance is going to cover a GLP-1 for sleep apnea.
Right. I mean, really, when you think about it, is we're not in charge of any of what's approved or not approved. And the more expensive these medications get, the more likely that the insurance companies, whether or not it's a big insurance company like Blue Cross Federal that employs and covers many millions of people, or whether it's like a privately self-insured organization, they're going to reserve these medicines for people with a lot less numbers of people that are going to require the medication.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about some of the things that this Foundayo does do. One of them is the barrier to entry. A lot of times when I've talked about patients who maybe have either had some difficulties with the injectable GLP-1s, maybe there's some needle phobia, or maybe there's some stigma attached to the shots. Taking this GLP-1 as a pill, it's a game changer for some people. Like, it's definitely a different thing that used to be a barrier, and now this new Foundayo can address that. The other one too, and we do know this about the GLP-1s, is that it can reduce food noise. And, even kind of that urge to kind of eat later at night, that can directly kind of relate to, your sleep kind of architecture, meaning middle of the night eating is not the best from a sleep kind of perspective. It's not the best in a lot of ways. But I will say that, there's some nice kind of pieces that the way that you consume this GLP-1, the Foundayo, can be a lot different than maybe what has kept other people on the fence about going to a GLP-1 because they didn't want to use a needle, even if it was an auto injector pen.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on that. But it's actually more of a barrier than it's not a barrier in terms of in sleep we talk about how pills can be very effective and they make us not address underlying issues. So
Yeah.
there
Right.
I see that with some of these medicines, we're still gonna have to address some of the underlying issues that have been plaguing particularly Americans, but many people, especially with the American diet, that um, they may not have to address from a weight loss perspective, but from a general health perspective, they need to address pretty strongly. Now, the other thing with the Foundayo is it does not look like it's looking for an approval for diabetes. And most of these medicines, GLP-1s, Tirzepatides, liraglutide, like all of them did get an approval for diabetes. So it's really interesting that they're saying, well, to heck with the medical condition with sugar. Let's focus on the medical condition of weight, which affects everything from the fatty liver to arthritis to sarcopenia.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think this is an interesting time, Michelle. And we've talked about this before about GLP-1s, where there's really, it's, initially we thought these were these were gut-based kind of medications, and they do have a huge impact on your gut, but it also apparently has a huge impact on your brain as well. Because really, one of the biggest parts is that people actually become unaware of food and the desire to naturally experience hunger, and so essentially your calorie intake drops significantly. Like these medications are not necessarily accelerating metabolism. What they are doing is they're reducing your kind of caloric intake. And I think what's also hugely important to address about all GLP-1s are really some of the side effects. And let's be honest, nausea, indigestion, these are really big side effects that often get treated with another medication, like another anti-nausea medication that kind of comes up. And what's really kind of interesting is, and Michelle, you and I have talked about this. You can have clients that are on these GLP-1 meds, but if you're not necessarily going to change your diet and start to eat in a more healthily way, which is typically speaking more fruits and vegetables, less processed foods, more kind of as whole as you can get to the original food itself, you're still going to experience problems with your diet.
Yeah, and it's not just about what you're taking in your body, it's the movement of your body. So people who move more frequently, um, whether or not it's in the athlete's scope or whether or not it's just a physical job, they generally eat less amounts and they generally eat at less times that are inappropriate for um, you know, contributing to poor sleep or contributing to acid reflux or contributing to weight gain.
Absolutely. Like there is a timing, and we haven't taken a deeper dive on this in the podcast in a while, but maybe we should, in terms of, calories consumed at certain parts of the day are metabolically different than calories consumed later in the day. And that's a whole other, deep dive on this stuff. But I think what the GLP-1s do, and I can really appreciate, is that it brings up this conversation about weight. It's not just about calories in and calories out. There's a lot of other things impacting it. And as it relates to sleep, and specifically with sleep apnea, I think the really kind of number one exciting kind of takeaway is, Foundayo is a game changer for accessibility in terms of people that didn't want to take, a medicine, a weight loss med as an injectable. We also know that Foundayo is not approved, at least at this time, for sleep apnea. The only one that really is that Tirzepatide. But the other part that I think is really important too is that for people where excess tissue, in the face, in the neck, in the tongue, weight loss can help to reduce those instances of obstructive sleep apnea. But just like you were saying earlier, there are people who are not overweight that have sleep apnea, and it has to do with just the architecture of your soft tissues and your throat and your bones. Like it can be a lot of stuff. So yeah. Well, one of the things that we want to know too, like if you're struggling with emotional eating or insomnia or the anxiety that comes with managing a chronic health issue, therapy can bridge the gap. If you want to talk with me, and definitely I do one-on-one therapy for people that are across the country with any of these kind of issues. Feel free to go over to my website. That's danielbaughn.com. That's www.danielbaughn.com. Click on the schedule button and definitely select the sleep takeout there on the intake form so that I know I can give you priority booking. And Michelle, what else can our listeners do?
And if you want physical screen-free tool to help you wind down tonight, head over to sleeptakeout.com right now and order the Sleep Takeout workbook. card is live. We can't wait for you to look at this, get your hands on it, try it. I think it is just something that we're really proud of. And I think that you will hear our voices when you look at the pages of this nice workbook, coloring book. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, Sleep Nation. Bye bye.